In this course, we will be building a simple meditation app in Expo React Native. So here if I refresh the screen and press reload, we get this icon on the splash screen, and then we see this initial page. We can click Get Started, and this takes us to a screen where we have different meditation previews. So here we can scroll vertically, we can click on one of the items, and here we see a duration of 10 seconds. We can click the Adjust Duration, which brings up this Modal, and we can select to change the duration, such as 5 minutes. Now when we click the Start button, this will start the countdown timer and play a song in the background. We can press Stop and the Back button. Now here in the bottom tab, we also have a screen for positive affirmations. So here when we click on that, we see different categories and we can scroll horizontally. Let's see if we click on one. Then here we see a positive affirmation in a scroll view. I can scroll down and select other ones as well. Also notice that in this background we are using a linear gradient. And so in this project, this will tie in your skills of HTML5 and CSS3, as well as JavaScript, React, and Tailwind, and Expo React Native. So this will showcase what you can build once you learn all these skills. So before we get started, be sure to check out the GitHub repository associated with this course, and I'll be providing that link in the description. So if I scroll down to the README section, this will provide the instructions of how to clone this repository, as well as how to install the project dependencies. There is a section for snippets, so when we get to this part of the course, I will reference and let you know which part you want to copy, to save you from having to type all this out. Also, to download all the assets, you can click on this link here, which will open up a folder in my Google Drive. In here you can download the images, fonts, and audio files, as well as the logo for the splash screen. Another quick tip, one way to view the project files is to press the period key, and this will open up Visual Studio Code in your browser. So this provides a convenient way to view the project without having to clone the project. So before we get started, one thing that I wanted to make note of is that this course is not beginner friendly. It does make a lot of assumptions that you have a solid understanding of web development fundamentals. So if I click on Courses on my website at stevencodecraft.com, I'm currently working on creating more beginner-friendly courses, which teaches you all the fundamentals that you would need. So upcoming courses that I'm working on include HTML5 and CSS3, the command line, JavaScript Pro, TypeScript Mastery, Tailwind CSS, React Mastery, and Expo React Native. Before we get started, if you're interested in supporting my courses and projects, you can follow me on my new YouTube channel and Instagram at StevenCodeCraft. And if you're looking to enhance your health and fitness routine, check out my workout and meal planning app at FitFuelPlanner.com. The app offers over 100 recipes, workout plans, meal plans, and a grocery list feature. It's designed to make tracking your calories and macronutrients straightforward and stress-free. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next section. So when building an app in Expo React Native, during local development, you will run the application on a simulator. So if you're working on a MacBook, you would use Xcode in order to run an iOS simulator. You could also run Android Studio and run an Android emulator. So if you're on macOS, go to the App Store and search Xcode. So this is an integrated development environment for developing iOS applications, and then install this application. So since this is a large application, it'll take about 30 minutes to download. So after you download it, click Open. So with Xcode open, do the drop down and then Settings. So select Locations and ensure that you have the command line tools installed. So once you have ensured that, with Xcode, go to Open Developer Tool and then Simulator. So our simulator opens up. You could also go to File and New Simulator. You can select the device type, open up, and create a new simulator. Now for running an Android emulator, you need to install Android Studio, so navigate to developer.android.com/studio. So open up Android Studio. So then click on the drop-down of More Actions, and then SDK Manager. So here, when you have Android SDK selected, you want to install the latest version. So for me, that's Android 14. On SDK Tools, you want to install the Android emulator, the Android SDK platform tools, and here the Intel emulator accelerator. So once you select these checkboxes, then click Apply. Now for specific information on how to run your Expo application on a simulator, navigate to the GitHub repository for this project. So scroll down. So right before the snippets, I have a section for the iOS simulator and the Android emulator. So when I click on this link, this opens up the Expo documentation. And this provides information on how you can get it installed and the different commands to run. Also for the Android Studio emulator, the instructions are different whether you are working on a Mac OS or on Windows. So be sure to select the one for your operating system and follow the commands on this documentation. So before we get started, with Visual Studio Code open, go to the extensions icon and search for the Prettier extension. So this code formatter, you want to install this. After installing it, you want to open up your settings, which you can do by clicking on this icon, or the keyboard shortcut is Command and comma or Control and comma. And then search Format on Save. And you want to ensure that this checkbox is checked. So when this is enabled, whenever you save a file, Visual Studio Code will use the Prettier extension to format your code. This helps you stay organized. So with Visual Studio Code open, right-click on your desktop and create a new folder. You can name this whatever you like. I'll name this Meditations. We'll just name it Meditation. Now you can drag and drop it into Visual Studio Code to open up this folder. Then click on the extensions icon. Now these extensions are not absolutely necessary, but it does improve your productivity. So let's expand it to be the full screen. Also, I'll list in the description of this video all of the extensions that I recommend. Going through the ones that I have installed already. So you want to install ES7 plus React, Redux, React Native Snippets. And this will allow you to use keyboard shortcuts. You also want to install Expo Tools, the Prettier Code Formatter extension, React Native Tools, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense for our styles. An optional one is vscode-icons. If you do install this one, then bring up your command palette, which will be Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P, and then type in icons, activate vscode-icons. So now that I did that, let's refer to the Expo documentation, which is at the URL of docs.expodev/router/installation. So because the Expo framework is constantly being updated, be sure to refer to the latest documentation to know which commands to run to start your project. So here we see the first command we want to run, which will create the boilerplate folders and files that we need to run an Expo React Native project, is npx create Expo app, and we want to install the latest version of the framework. So we can just copy this. I can show the command prompt with Command J or Control and backtick, then simply paste that in here. So node package execute. This will create our new project. So we want to name this Simple Meditation. So here we see created a new folder. Now it's installing the necessary dependencies. So our new project has been successfully created. So here we can clear this out. And let's expand that it generated for us. Close this out. Now I'm going to make this larger. So I'll go to my settings with Command and comma. So you don't have to do this. This is just so it's easier for you to see the code in the video. I'll change the zoom level to 2, making it larger. So here we see we have the app directory. And in this folder will contain all the source code for our application. We also have the assets folder, which contains static assets, components, which contains reusable React Native components, constants, we have React hooks, scripts, and other configuration files. So scrolling back, if we want to start our project, we would do that with npx expo start. So now let's open up our command prompt, we'll list everything out, and we'll change into Simple Meditation. And then we'll run npx, so node package execute, expo start, and then pass in the flag -- clear to clear the cache. So here we see it's showing a QR code, so we can scan it with our device, and we can see our application on our phone. Now, in order for us to do this, we need to download Expo Go. So I go back here. Expo Go, which is free. It's available on the App Store and the Google Play Store. So once you download this application based on your device, you'll be able to view it on a physical device. Now you can also run it in local development. You can either run it in the web browser by pressing W. You can run it on an iOS simulator by pressing I. Now, in order for this to work, you need to have Xcode installed, and you also need to be developing on a Mac. You can also press A to open on an Android virtual device. And this assumes that you have Android Studio installed. So I'll run it on my iOS simulator, so I'll press I. This brings up the simulator. So also, you're bound to see errors during development. So if you do encounter any error in this process, be sure to copy this and paste it into either Google, Stack Overflow, or ChatGPT to help resolve that. This just says that the simulator is taking a long time to start up, and the operation has timed out, so we're just waiting for it. So here we see this is the initial start page. So here I'll do Control and backtick to close the terminal. So here if I expand the app directory, I see that it's created so many new boilerplate files for me. See if I click into one of them, such as the index one. So this is the component that is being used to display the current screen. Now since it is displaying a lot of content, we want to clear everything out and start from scratch. We'll go through and we'll delete everything. We'll also delete all these styles, view, component, and then text. I'll just say hello world. Now you want to import this, so do Control and dot, update, and also we want to install text. So I'll just manually do that here. And I will remove this because we aren't using those components. Now if I save it, this will perform hot reloading. And so here I see hello world is displayed in the top left, but it's being cut off. So I want to install some more styles. Let's say if I do container, and I do flex 1, and I do justify content, and we'll do center. Now to apply this, I do style, and then styles.container. This applies that style, and here I see it's displayed vertically centered. I also want it horizontally centered, so I'll do align items, center, and this completely centers it in the center of the screen. Now I like sorting this alphabetically, so I'll bring up the command palette, Command-Shift-P, and I'll do sort. And this sorts these key value pairs for me. Help me stay organized. So here we see we have a tab layout, and we have updated our initial screen. Now one thing I want to do, I want to clear out all of the boilerplate files that it generated for us. So this also includes these test files. We'll go here, and we'll just delete all of it, because we want to create it from scratch so we have a better understanding of our source code. Likewise, what we just did in this index file, we copy everything here, and we want to clear everything out. We'll just delete this tabs directory, and everything in here as well. So deleting everything. So in the app directory in Expo React Native, we're using Expo Router, which provides file-based routing. So this is similar to how it would be in a framework such as Next.js, and it makes it more similar to web development when it comes to achieving navigation. So the home would be index.jsx. We'll paste that in here. We'll save it. Let's expand here. Now that we refreshed it, we see hello world, and without the tab bar. So now let's add all the asset files that we're going to need for this project. So once again, in the GitHub repo, click on this link to open up the Google Drive. Then this drop down, and we can download that. So after it's downloaded, let's copy all of this, and we'll drag and drop it into assets. We'll replace it, for the fonts directory. So we'll close the assets directory. And now we want to add our constant files. Let's go back, and we'll go back to the repo. And this is where we use our snippets. So here, if we do this is the TypeScript file which imports our affirmation images. We'll copy this. Now in constants, we'll add a new file, and we'll name this affirmation-images.typescript. Then we will paste that in here. So looking at this file, we see that we import all the assets for the affirmation images, and we export it as a JavaScript object. We can close this. Going back, we'll close this out. Now we'll copy for our meditation images. We'll name this meditation images.typescript. Paste that in here. Now for our meditation data, we'll copy this. And we'll name this meditation data. Pasting that. And so here we see we've defined an interface in TypeScript for our meditation type. And this specifies the ID, title, image name, and audio name. We also create an array of this type. And these define the previews that we're going to be showing on the meditation screen. Now we also define an object for our audio files. And so this is a key mapping pair which maps the name of the audio file with the import statement and the actual audio file. Now let's update our colors.typescript file. So here we'll just clear this out and we'll simplify it to be export default, and we'll say primary, that will be 0A4D4A. We'll do gray, which is 5E5D5E, and dark, which is 1A1A1A. Saving that. So let's clear all these files. And so one thing, I named this with the .jsx extension. I can change that to be tsx, since we're using TypeScript. So one more file that we want to add is a TypeScript file for the affirmations gallery. So we can copy this. In our constants file, we will add affirmations-gallery.typescript. We'll paste this in here. So let's look over this file. Here we see we import the affirmation images object that we had defined in affirmation images. So if I go there, just to remind you that, this is where we imported and exported all of these image files. So back in affirmations gallery. Then I define an array consisting of JavaScript objects, which define the affirmation title. So this is the title of the category, and an array, which we access with the data key or data property. This defines the IDs, the text, and the image to use. So next we want to install NativeWind. So this uses Tailwind CSS and allows us to use the Tailwind class names in our React Native projects. So we want to click on the Expo Quick Starts, which will let us know what commands we will have to run in the terminal. So we've already ran these commands to create our Expo app, and we're using npm as our package manager. So we can do npm install NativeWind. We'll close this and run it. So that was successful. Now we install Tailwind as a developer dependency. Going back. So now we run npx tailwind CSS init in order to initialize our configuration file. We'll run that. Closing this terminal and navigating to our Tailwind config file. Once again, you want to navigate to the GitHub repository, which will be here. And here in the snippet section, you want to copy this file, and we will replace it here. So here we specify what component files we want to use NativeWind, and we also specify the font family for the custom fonts that we added. Going back, let's refer back to these docs. Now we also need to add this in the plugin section. Is NativeWind/Babel and our Babel config file. So here in the sidebar, Babel config, and then we will add plugins, pasting that here. So let's run our project again. We'll do npx expo start, closing this out. Press I to open up in the iOS simulator. Let's refresh this. So Command D, and then reload. So now let's close this, and we'll navigate to our home page again, and we'll apply a NativeWind style. So currently we're using style sheets built into React Native. So let's remove this, and we'll specify class name. We'll say flex1, we'll say justify, center, and item center. And here we see the same styles are being applied. So in order to get rid of this squiggly line in VS Code, we'll add a declaration file in simple meditation. So app.d.ts. We see VS Code is no longer showing that squiggly line when we specify the class name. So let's implement our home screen. So I'll clear everything out here, and we'll start from scratch. And we'll use a snippet and a keyboard shortcut, which is React Native function export, then tab, and then we'll name this app. Let's save that. I'll open up this, then press I, open up the simulator again. So here we see our text app is displayed in the top left. So now we'll apply a class name here. Say it's flex1 to take up the entire height. And we want to use a background image. So we go into assets and then meditation images. We want to use this image of the beach. So we'll use that here. We'll use the image background component built into React Native. And we'll apply the props. So let's import, name it beach image from at, which means from the root, then assets, meditation images, and then beach.webp. Save that. Now we will apply source to that image. The resize mode will be cover, and we'll apply a class name of flex1. Save that. So now the image is being displayed, but we see it's still showing white above and white below, and the text is on the bottom. So first we'll move the text within those opening and closing tags of the image background component. So now app is being displayed within it. So now let's add a shared layout route. So we'll add a new file, and we'll name it underscore layout.tsx. And the naming convention is important. So in Expo Router, we can add a layout file at every single directory, and this will define shared user interface components for every file within that directory. So we'll name this as export default function, and I'll name this root layout. And then we will simply return the component slot from Expo Router. So import that, import slot from Expo Router. So this component acts the same as the children prop in web applications, and basically this will render the child route in its place. So in this case, it will render this index page, this app component. So we'll save this. And here we see the image now spans the entire height. So we want to apply a linear gradient on the screen, and we need to import a library. So click this plus icon, and we'll change to our directory. So now we'll go here for Expo Linear Gradient, which is the package we'll be using. We can copy this to install that, paste it in here. Okay, so close this, close that out, closing the terminal. So now we can utilize that component here. So it'll be linear gradient. Move this up, be within it. Let's import that. So we're not getting the auto import right now, so we'll just do it manually. So it'll be import linear gradient from Expo linear gradient. But we'll use the class name of flex1, and we'll apply the color prop. We'll specify the array RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and 0.4, and then RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and 0.8. And this with a parenthesis. We can save that. And here we see our linear gradient is being applied. So we know that our text is still being displayed on the top left. So let's use a safe area view. Safe area view. So we get this import and move the text within it. And so now we see our text is being displayed here. So we'll use class name, text center, text white. We'll make it bold and 4XL. So now it's more visible. And let's highlight this and let's wrap it in a view. So we'll bring up the command palette and then emit wrap with abbreviation, view. And here we will name this simple meditation. Let's apply some styles to our safe area view. So we'll say flex 1, horizontal padding of 1, and justify between. And let's add our subtext. So that'll be text. And it's simplifying meditation for everyone. Apply a class name. This will also be text center, text white. The size is 2XL, and we'll apply a margin top of 3. So now we have this being displayed as the header. Now, one thing we notice, the time as well as the battery is currently dark. So let's apply the status bar. So we can do that just before the closing element or closing component of the safe area view. So it'll be status bar from React Native, the style prop of light, and it's soft closing. Let's see. Status bar. Save that. So this is actually from Expo status bar. So we're not using that from React Native. Instead, it's supposed to be import status bar from Expo status bar. And that makes it white for us. Good. So now, after this text, we'll add another view, and we can create a button. So because we'll be creating buttons throughout this course, we can make it a reusable component. So if we go into components, new file, we'll call this custom button.tsx. So once again, we would do React Native function export and tab. Now we would do a touchable opacity. Now we want to specify an interface for our props. So it'll be interface custom button props. So we can specify the onPress function, which will return void, the title, which would be a string, optional text styles, which would be string, and optional container styles. Now we can destructure that from the props. So we specify onPress, title, text styles, which by default will be an empty string, container styles, which by default is an empty string, and we'll specify custom button props. Save that. So now we'll specify the title here. We'll specify the active opacity to be 0.7. And we'll specify classes. Put this on a new line here. Class name. And we'll use a backtick. So we can use interpolation here. So the background will be white. It'll be rounded. XL. We'll specify a minimum height of 62 pixels. Justify center. and item center. And here we will apply the container styles, which is passed in as a prop. And we'll also set the onPress event handler. So onPress. So for text, apply a class name. Once again, we'll use the curly brackets. So we'll specify font, semi-bold, text large, and applying text styles. Save that. So now let's utilize this custom component in our homepage. So now we can utilize this custom button in our homepage. So we'll specify this here, custom button, to import that. We'll specify onPress for now to just be a console log. So console.log, say tap. And the title will be get started. See here, and it's soft closing. Save that. And here we see our get started button is displayed on the bottom. And so here we see our button is spanning the entire width of the screen. So instead of using horizontal padding for the save area view, let's make it a margin, MX, and we'll specify that to be 5. So now it's no longer spanning the entire width. So now we'll set a margin horizontal, and let's make that 8. Oh, we try 12. Okay, so that's more visible. So another thing we want to do, go into the sidebar, go into app.json. We want to specify what we want our splash image to be. So go into our assets. We want it to be the simple meditation logo. We'll specify that here. Simple meditation logo. Now we can save that. And it's not in the images, it's actually at the root of the assets. So we can save that. So let's close the sidebar. And let's do Command D. And then reload. And now we see our splash screen logo being displayed. So let's make sure that when we actually press this button, that it's properly calling the console statement. So we'll show that. Let's just clear everything out so we can easily see that. Now when we perform a click on it, we see that we are getting our expected output. So rather than simply logging into the console, we want to route to another file. So for now, let's just add another file, and we'll just call it test.tsx, React Native function export, and it's just test. So now it has that. And now we will utilize the useRouterHook. So const router, use router from Expo Router. And now we can use this to navigate to that file. So we can call router.push, and it would be test. So this route name that we use is based on the name of the file that we just created, which is test.tsx. So now when we click get started, this takes us to the test page. Now the text is being displayed in the top left, so once again we'll just apply that class name of flex1, justify, center, and item center. And here we see test is being displayed in the center of the screen. So now we'll do Command D, reload this, go back to the home screen. So now we want to add a tab navigation. So open up the sidebar, and we'll add a new directory, and we'll put it in parentheses. So in Expo Router, this defines a group. So we'll call it tabs. And so essentially a group is a directory where we can organize different files. And this name of the directory, tabs, will not show in the URL. So in other words, when we navigate to it, we don't have to include tabs in the path. So now we can add a new file here. And I'll name this nature meditate, a TSX, React Native function export, and tab. I'll just name this nature meditate, saving that. So now instead of navigating to this test file, we can navigate to Nature Meditate. And because we wrapped it in a group, we don't have to include tabs in this path. So now when we click Get Started, it takes us to the Nature Meditate page rather than this test page. So let's remove this. We no longer need it. So one thing to note, we will also be using a linear gradient in this Nature Meditate component. So rather than having to duplicate that, as well as the safe area view within it, let's create a reusable component, which we can use for both of these components. So in the components directory, we can add, we'll name it AddGradient.tsx, React Native function export, AddGradient. So in here, this will take in the props of children, which is the content that will be placed within it, and colors. And we've just specified children to be any, and colors to be an array of strings. Let's save it, and it's formatted for us. Now for the view, we can use a linear gradient here. Linear gradient from Expo Linear Gradient. Adding that here. Then we'll pass in the colors prop. And we'll specify a class name of flex1. Now within it, you can render the children. And for the content, so let's add another component here. And I'll name this content.tsx, React Native function export. And this will be, we can clear this out, a safe area view. And once again, this will take in the children, any, pass that in here. And we'll specify class name. We'll say flex1. See horizontal padding of 5. And vertical padding, setting that to 3. So now let's utilize that within our AddGradient. And we'll import that. Clear these imports up. So now we define our AddGradient. Let's utilize that in our homepage. So that'll be an index.tsx. So rather than doing all this, for now, I'm just going to do AddGradient. Actually, a better thing to do, let's highlight all this. It will be linear gradient. Bring up the command palette, Command-Shift-P. Wrap with abbreviation, and we would do AddGradient. Let's import this. And we need to pass in this colors property. Pass that in. And so now we can remove the linear gradient, which is no longer needed. Save that. Now we also can remove this margin that we specified. Let's just make it px1. Okay, good. So now that we define a reusable component with AddGradient, we can utilize that in our new file, which is Nature Meditate. So here, we can specify a class name of flex1. And let's actually navigate to it so we can actually see the changes. So now we'll wrap everything in AddGradient. And we'll put this text in here. So Option and the up arrow to move it. And we need to pass in the colors, which takes in an array of strings. So we'll pass this in. And we'll use the hexadecimal value of 161B2E. Then we can do hashtag 0A4D4A. And then hashtag 766E67. Let's save that. And here we see this gradient being applied. So now, let's wrap this So bring up the command palette with Command Shift and P. We'll wrap it in a view. And we'll specify a class name. And I'll say margin bottom of 6. In this text, we will do class name of text gray. And I can do Control and Spacebar to see the different options. And I'll say 200. Now, margin bottom of 3. Make the font bold. Change the size to be text 4XL. And I'll say text left. So the text align is to the left. So we can also update this text to be welcome. Welcome. And I'll just add my name here. Then we'll add another text. And I'll say start your meditation practice today. Now let's specify our styles. So this could be text, indigo, and I'll say 100. I'll do text XL for the size, and the font medium. Okay, so after AddGradient, I want to add, say, status bar. Status bar from Expo status bar, style light, self-closing. So that makes it display white. We want to add another view here. And so we want to use the FlatList component. And so this is the component that we will use for rendering either a vertical list or a horizontal list. So we can do FlatList. And it's self-closing. So let's import that. Command and dot. Update import. Now we want to import the meditation data. So we have that stored in constants. So constants, meditation data. And so this is the array that we'll be using. And we will be rendering this. So just copy this. And I can say import meditation data from the root, so the @ symbol, and then constants, and then meditation data. So we got that. And so we'll specify data to be the meditation data. And save that. So we can also say, if we do class name, margin bottom, and let's see the different options here. Let's just say 20 for now. And we need to specify a key extractor. So actually, let me add these props on their own line so it's more readable. So now we can do key extractor, because every item in the list needs to be uniquely identifiable. So pass in an item, and we will use item.id, and it has to be a string data type, so toString. Now we don't want to show the vertical line as we're scrolling, so I can say show vertical scroll indicator to false, and then we'll do render item. So in this prop, we will specify what we want to display for each item in the list. So we can destructure the item, so parentheses, and then destructure with curly braces, the item. Let's pass in the arrow function. So this would be a pressable from React Native. And for now, we'll just specify the onPress to console log. Console.log. I'll just say press for now. And then we can specify. Let's add this on a new line so it's more readable. Add that here. The class name. The height, 48. Horizontal margin of 3. It'll be rounded. And the overflow is hidden. Okay. So now within it, we'll use the image background component. So image background from React Native. Add it on its own line. So the source of it will be, let's import the meditation images as well. So this is from constants meditation images. So this array is what we'll be using. So let's just make a copy of this. So I'll just name it Meditation Images. Meditation Images. So here we can specify from this array item.id -1 as its index from 0. Specify the resize mode, the cover. We can specify a class name of flex1. So we can specify the border radius with rounded. And let's see. We can do large and then justify center. So now we can specify text to display within it. So we'll do text and then the item.title. Save that. So now we see our images being displayed. You can scroll vertically. So now let's also apply some styles. So let's say class name is text gray 100. Then we'll do text 3XL. We'll make it bold and we'll center it. So here we see our text being displayed in the center of each image. And then we want to wrap our text with a linear gradient. So let's just specify that here. So I'll say linear gradient from Expo linear gradient. So let's highlight all this and then option and then up arrow. And let's specify colors. So this takes in an array of strings. So we'll say transparent and then RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and then 0.8. So the parenthesis goes within it. Save that. And then let's do a class name of, say if I do flex1, then we can do justify center and then item center. And so now the text is being centered and we are applying our linear gradient for all the items. So now let's add our tab bar. We can do this within the tabs group or tabs directory. And let's add a layout file. So naming convention is important. It's layout.tsx. So I can do React Native function export and tab. And I'll just call this tabs layout. Saving that. And so here, let me clear this out. And I would do tabs from Expo Router. And I specify the props. So I can say screen options, passing in a JavaScript object. So header shown to be false. And I'll say tab bar active tint color to be colors.primary. So colors, import that with command and dot. And that's from our constants file that we specified earlier. I'm going to click into it just to remind you. It's just this very simple JavaScript object. So I can close that. Now we can specify our tabs within it. So I can do tabs.screen. And this is a self-closing component. So let's say we do name. So the name will be the name of the file. And so the one file that we have here is nature meditate. So we can specify that here. Nature meditate. So this specifies what component we want to use when we navigate to this tab. Save that. And let's specify the options. Passing in that JavaScript object. So the tab bar label that we want to display is meditate. Let's save that. So also, let's go to get started. Let's reload it. So command and T. Reload. Go back to our index page. See what we get here. In order to get this to display, let's update the layout in our root. And we need to specify stack screens. And so this enables another screen to be displayed on top of the current one. So rather than using slot, we were rendering our child routes previously. Let's specify stack from Expo Router, then stack.screen, and I'll say name being the tabs directory, the options being header shown, false, and it's soft closing, so we can save that. And we also, let's just copy this with Command Shift and down arrow. So we want to specify our index page, so index. So that's all for now. So now that we specified that, let's click the Get Started button now. And this performs the navigation that we wanted. So now we see the same meditation preview page, and now we see this very simple tab bar being displayed. So this tab bar is now displayed because of the tabs layout component that I have in the underscore layout file in the tabs directory. So now let's specify what icon we want to use. So if I go to package.json, we have Expo Vector Icons installed as a dependency. Search that. Expo Vector Icons. So this shows different icons that we can use within our application. So let's search for flower, tulip, and this is one we'll use for our meditation tab. So let's copy this. We can paste that in here. Expo Vector Icons. And then, so another option, let's add this on a new line so it's more readable. So I'll do here. And you do a comma actually first. Then we can do tab bar icon. We'll destructure color. Passing in our arrow function. Now, we want to do this component here. So we can just copy that and paste that in here. Now, instead of the color being black, we want to specify that to be the color that is passed in, that we destructured. Let's save that. And now we see that icon being displayed for the Meditate tab. Now we also want to create another tab for affirmations. So within the tabs directory, we can just specify another file for now, and I'll call this affirmations.tsx React Native function export. I'll just say affirmations for now. And then we can specify down here. To make it simple, let's just copy all this. Shift, Option, and down arrow. So the name, we want to specify the name of the file we just created, which is affirmations. And the label, it's just that, but capitalize the A. Now, for the icon we want to use, let's search for open. And we're going to use this open book icon. So we can copy that and paste that. We can actually simplify this import. So we can instead do import some material community icons and en typo. Let's see, from at expo/vector icons. So that simplifies our imports. So now we'll just use en typo, and then we're using open book. And so now we see in our tab bar, we have meditate and we have affirmations, and we can click between them. So now let's work on the new affirmations component. I click Get Started, and then navigate to the affirmation screen. So first we'll apply a class name here. We'll set it to flex1. Let's close the sidebar just so we can see it better. So now let's specify an app gradient. Now within it, we'll specify the colors prop, passing in an array of strings. So we'll do hashtag 2E1F58. Then we'll do hashtag 54426B. And then we'll do hashtag A7908F. Actually, let's move this text up so I can rid of the squiggly line. And here we see our gradient being applied. So let's wrap this in a scroll view. So Command Shift and P to bring up the command palette. And we'll wrap it with scroll view. Let's import that. Period from React Native. So we'll specify the prop of shows vertical scroll indicator, and we'll set that to false. So now let's change this text to be change your beliefs with affirmations. Save that. And we'll specify a style for it. So the class name will apply text zinc 50 for the color, text 3XL for the size, and we'll make it bold. So now it's displaying there. So let's create a view. And within this view, we're going to show our horizontal list showing the affirmation previews. So all the images. So rather than implementing all that here, I'm going to create that in the components file. So let's bring up our sidebar. So here in components, new file, and let's call this guided affirmations gallery.tsx. So React Native function export and tab. So we can close the sidebar here so we can see it better. So let's define the interface for the props that we're going to want to structure. So we'll call it interface, and then we just copy this, and then props. So we'll take in a title, which will be a string data type, and we'll say, we can call it previews. So in constants, let's just create a directory. We'll call it models, and within it, we'll create a new file, and we'll call it affirmation category.typescript. And within it, we will export an interface. We can call this affirmation category. This will be a title and a string and data. And we'll say it's a gallery preview data. And it takes in, specified to be an array. Now let's define that. So export interface, gallery preview data. So that will be an ID, which is a number, text, which is a string, and image, and we'll say that it is any. So now that we define this, we want to import these interfaces. So here, we'll specify this to be gallery preview data, and it's an array of data. So now let's destructure this here. So title and previews. Specify this here and save it. So now let's specify a class name here. So class name of margin vertical 5. Let's wrap this text in a view. Bring up the command palette, emit wrap, and then view. So we'll specify a class name, margin bottom of 2. And with this text is where we will render the title of this category. Class name to apply styles. So we'll make the text white. We'll make it bold. And the size is XL. So let's create another view. And this is where we will render our list. So let's apply a class name here. Class name of space vertical of 2. And here we will use our FlatList component. But rather than rendering it vertical, as we did on the Meditate screen, we'll be rendering it horizontal. So we'll specify FlatList from React Native, and it's self-closing. So the data that it takes is previews based on this prop. Now, show horizontal scroll indicator, we'll set that to false. Now for the key extractor, we just use to uniquely identify each item in the list. Specify that, take the item, and then item.id, and it has to be a string. Now we'll render item. So we need to destructure the item. Here we will pass in and specify. We'll use the link element, which is from Expo Router. And here we'll do href, so hypertext reference. And we'll specify that in backticks. So it will be / affirmations / and then interpolation of item.id. And then we'll pass in the prop of as child. So the link element typically has, we would specify text as this. for example, and it would treat it as text. But since we are specifying a more complex child component within it, that's why we need to pass in and specify the asChild prop. So here we'll use pressable from React Native, and then view. So we'll use class name, the height of 36, a width of 32. We'll make the border radius rounded, and I'll say margin right of 4. And within this view, we want to specify our image. So image from React Native. So the source will be the item.image. The resize mode will be cover, and we'll specify our styles to be the width of full and the height of full. And it's self-closing. And the last prop that we need to specify for our flat list is we're going to make it a horizontal list. So we define this. And now we can utilize that in the affirmations component. So here, we want to import the affirmations gallery, and that's specified in our constants directory in this file. So we'll be utilizing this array. Let's go to affirmations. Now let's just use it here, affirmations, and we'll import that. And we will map that, so .map from G, our arrow function. And we will utilize guided affirmations gallery. Now we need to pass in the key prop to uniquely identify it. So let's just say it's g.title to uniquely identify that affirmation category. And we'll pass in the title, which is g.title again. And we'll call it the previews, which is g.data. Save that. And here we see all of the affirmation previews have been displayed horizontally. So everything that we specified in affirmations gallery in our constants directory is now being displayed on the affirmation screen. So here in the guided affirmations component, in our flat list where we specify how we want to render the item, we're using the link element, or link component rather. So if I click on one of these preview items, this will navigate to affirmations / and then the item ID. And here this is currently an unmatched route, so we need to create a file for this. So I'm going to change the structure of how I have the files in the tabs component. So currently I have nature meditate for this screen and affirmations for this one. But because I need to have nested routes for this affirmation screen, I'm instead going to make this a folder. So we'll right click that and I'll name this affirmations. And I will drag and drop this file to this directory, and I'll rename it to be the index file. So we'll be able to access it the same way through going to / affirmations. So here it's refreshing. Let's reload the app. Reload. Get started. So to get this to display, let's create a new layout file in this directory. So it'll be layout.tsx. So React Native function export. I'll just call this affirmations layout. So let's clear this out. And we'll use the stack component again from Expo Router. And within it, we'll say stack.screen. The name of that file is index. And the options will be the header shown, false. And it's self-closing. So now let's reload this again. So we click get started. And now we see the icon displaying properly again. So we needed to create a new layout file within the affirmations directory. So we also want to specify a dynamic route in this affirmations directory. So we can name that with square brackets and then item id.tsx. So I can do React Native function export and then tab. I'll name this affirmation practice. And so with this route, it'll be accessible through / affirmations / and then passing in an ID value. So this is the file that we will navigate to. Here, if I go into guided affirmations gallery, so when a user clicks on this element, it will navigate to that new component that we just created. So let me resize this again, and we will navigate back to that new file that we want to work on. Close in the sidebar so we can see it. In order to access that ID that is passed in through the route, we will use the use local search params hook. So use local search params from Expo Router. So we call that here, and we can destructure that. So it's item ID. So now we can use that. Now let's do class name, which is flex1. Now let's use a useStateHook to determine which affirmation we want to use. So if I go to affirmations gallery, so this is where all of our affirmations are specified. So we need to go through all the data properties or data keys to find the ID that matches based on the ID that was included in the route. So this will make more sense once I implement it. Let's create a use effect from React. And the dependency list is just an empty array. So this is just called when we first navigate to this component. And we'll specify our state. So we can say use state. Let's import that from React. And this will be gallery preview data. So we'll specify this to be affirmation to use and set affirmation. Got that. Now, to determine which affirmation we want to display when a user clicks on one of the previews, let's just create a for loop. So I'll say let index assign to 0 while the index is less than the affirmations gallery.length. Update that index value. So we'll get the current array of the affirmation data equals affirmation gallery at that ID specified here dot data. So now that we got this array, let's find if that ID is found in this list. So const affirmation to start. We're getting the object that matches affirmation data dot find, and we can specify this to be a if the a.id is equal to, and we need to cast this to a number because this is a string. So we'll specify item ID here. Save that. And so now if this is truthy, then we can update our state. Affirmation to start and return to break out of this for loop. Currently, when we click on an item, we still get this unmatched route. So let's update our layout in the affirmations directory. Close this. Let's just copy this with Shift Option and down arrow. And we'll update this to be square brackets and then item ID. Save that. So now we click on it. Let's refresh this. Command D. Reload. So here if I click Get Started, if I navigate to affirmations and then click on one of these previews, I now get the affirmation practice page. So this component that we're currently working on. Close that terminal. So now let's update what we are rendering here. So let's use the image background component, background from React Native. The source will be the affirmation that we found here. And so make it optional for the image. The resize mode is cover, and the class name is flex1. So let's save this. So now our image is being displayed. So now, and currently this is a self-closing tag, but I actually don't want that. So we'll do AddGradient here. And then once again, we'll pass in our colors, which is an array of strings. So we'll do RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.3. And then RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.9. Now let's close this tag. And just for now, we'll just have some text. I'll just say test for now, just to get rid of that squiggly line. Let's save that. So now we see our linear gradient is being applied. So now let's specify our back button so that we can navigate back to the affirmations index page. So we'll do a pressable from React Native. And let's use our useRouterHook. So going back to the top. So here we can just import. Let's include the router in the import. And we'll specify the onPress method. Pass in this arrow function. And I'll do router.back. Now within it, so let's go to Expo Vector Icons. Click on here. And then say if I do left circle, then click on this one. So I can copy this. And we'll use that icon. Let's copy the component. And we'll pass it in here. And let's update the color to be white. And I'll make the size 50. So let's update the class name. So I'll say class name absolute top of 16, left 6. Let me try refreshing this, or reloading rather. So now we see the icon being displayed. If we click on it, then it navigates back to this affirmations index page. So let's continue displaying the information that we need on the affirmations detail screen, or the item ID screen rather. So we can specify a scroll view, which we'll use to display our text, and that's from React Native. And let's actually specify a class name here of margin top of 20, and shows vertical scroll indicator, vertical, to be false. And within it, I'll just specify this here. Specify a view. Save that. So there's the formatting for us. So I'll specify a class name, and I'll say the height to be full, and then justify center. Now within this, you can specify another view. For this class name, the height would be 4/5, and then justify center. So now we can just render affirmations dot text. So we'll display this for now. So here it says text strings must be rendered within a text component. And a text. And we will move this up. Dismiss. Let's reload it. Get started. Affirmation screen. Click on one of these previews. And now we see this text being displayed, but it's all in black. So let's update class name. So make it white. We'll make the text larger. So you can say margin bottom of 12. We'll make it bold. And we will center the text. Save that. And now we see this text being properly displayed in white, but currently it's all bundled together. So to update this, here in the use effect hook, I want to split each sentence based on period. So here, once I find the affirmation that I want to display, let's say const affirmation array is equal to affirmation to start dot text dot split on the period character. I'll say remove the last element if it's an empty string. So if affirmations array, so the last element, affirmations array dot length -1, if that's equal to an empty string, then I'll just remove that one, affirmations array pop, because that last element, in this case, is just an empty string, which we don't want to include. Then I'll create a new state hook here. So I can say use state, which would be an array of strings for all the sentences to display. And I can say const sentences, set sentences here. And then I will set that. So the affirmations array that I'm setting. So let's save this. And we're good. So rather than just rendering the text all at once, let's instead map over the sentences array. So I can say sentences.map. So it will specify a sentence and the index value, passing in our arrow function. And this text, let's move it up. So highlight it and then option up arrow. We need to specify our key to uniquely identify each text element or component. So that would be the index. Let's see, did I spell this right? Sentences. Sentences possibly undefined. So when I specify the hook, I'll pass in an empty array here. So that gets rid of that squiggly line. So for rendering this, I'm going to specify the current sentence. And because we split it based on the period, I'm going to include the period here. So let's save that. So currently hot reloading isn't working for my simulator, so I'll have to manually reload it. Navigating here. Let's go to one of these. And here I see each sentence is being displayed on its own line, and I can scroll to read all of them. So let's see if I do another one, such as this preview. So we've implemented our affirmation screen and the affirmations detail screen. So now we implemented our affirmations page. So let's continue with the meditation screen. So when we click on one of these items, we want to navigate to the meditation screen. So let's add that. So here in the tabs directory, we could just add meditate.tsx, and let's do React Native function export in tab. We'll just name this meditate and save that. So now we need to update our layout file in the root of the app directory. So with this one next to the index file. Let's close the sidebar. So Option, Shift, and down arrow. I'll just say meditate. So let's navigate to the nature meditate file. So currently, when the user performs a press on this, it just logs out, press. Now we want to update that. So let's use router from Expo Router. So let's say router, just import that, dot push, and here we can use backticks. I'll say / meditate. So now, after I click on one of these items, it takes me to that new component that we just created. So now let's work and improve the styles for this component. So we'll apply a class name of flex1, so it spans the entire height of the screen. Let's do image background from React Native. And we'll pass in the props. So we'll say the source. Now for now, we're going to import meditation images. Meditation images. So let's import that first. We can say import meditation images from that constant file that we created. Now I'm going to name this differently. Say meditation _ images. So I know it's a constant. So I'm just going to click into here just to remind you that we imported all these images from our assets directory and exported it as an array. So now that we have this array, for now, let's just use the first one in that array as the background source. Now other props that we need to set are the resize mode. So we'll do resize mode of cover, do class name of flex1, and within image background, for now, let's just do text, and we'll just say test, for example. So now we're expanding the entire height with the background image that we selected. Let's remove this text. We don't need that. Great. So let's use an app gradient. So this will make sure that our text does not span above where the time and the battery is. So it's actually readable for the user. So we'll say app gradient. And we need to, let's move this up with Option up arrow. And we need to specify the prop of colors. So colors is an array of strings. So first we'll do transparent. And then we would do RGBA 0, 0, 0, and 0.8. Save that. So now we get our linear gradient applied, and our text is now visible. So one thing, I want to add a back button. So I can say pressable from React Native. And so when I do onPress, I want to use router from Expo Router .back. And I'll say the class name is absolute top 16 left 6, and I'll just apply a z index as well. I can save that. So for the element that I'm going to use within the pressable component, I'm going to use the Expo Vector Icons library again. So we'll use the left circle, select this one. Now we'll copy the import statement. I can just add that here. And then I will copy how we're going to render this component. So I'll paste that in. For the size, I'll update this to be 50. And for the color, I'll use white. Let's save that. And here we see our back button is shown here. Now before continuing, when we look at the tabs, we see that the meditation tab, the affirmations tab, and we have another tab here for this meditation screen. But we just want to show two tabs and instead have this meditation screen be nested for this meditate tab. So Let's change the structure. Here we currently have this file within the tabs directory. So let's now create a folder, and I'll name this Meditate. And so this Meditate file, let's drag and drop it into here. And rather than it being meditate.typescript or TSX, let's rename it to be a dynamic route, and I'll just say ID. And this ID will help determine which meditation image we want to use, as well as what audio file we want to use. So with this, we need to update our layout file. So rather than just being meditate, it's meditate/ID, and save that. So now, after reloading the app, when I click Get Started, looking at the tabs, I just see Meditate and Affirmations. Now, if I go back to Nature Meditate, currently we are just navigating to /meditate, but in order to get to this file, I need to pass in an ID, as it's /meditate / the ID to specify, or the ID of the meditation that we want to show to the user. So let's do / and then interpolation item.id. So now after reloading the app, click to Get Started. So now when I click on one of these meditation previews, say if I click on this one, so now it navigates to this Meditate screen. So this component that we defined here. And when I click on the back button, it takes us back to the meditation index screen. So here, back in this file, in order to utilize that ID that was passed to us, we have to use the use local search params again. So we'll do const, we'll destructure that ID, and then use local search params. And now we can use that ID to specify what image we want to display, rather than just doing the one at the 0th index all the time. So we need to cast it to a number, and we'll do -1 because arrays are indexed from 0. Let's save this. So now I'm going to click on Rivers. Let's reload this. So now when I click on Rivers, this shows the corresponding image for the one that we just clicked on. Now let's continue working on this component. So after pressable, let's add a view. Now let's just give it a class name of flex1 and justify center. Let's navigate there just so we can see it with hot reloading. We'll specify another view, and within it, a text. So for now, we'll just say 0, 0. Now, let's say class name of the horizontal margin of auto, the background neutral, 200. The border radius is rounded, so the width of 44 and the height of 44. And we'll say justify center and item center. Save this. So now we see this white circle being displayed. And let's apply some styles for our text. So the class name of text4xl will make the text blue, 800. So we can save that. So now it's more visible. And so this represents the meditation time or the duration to display to the user. So after this view, let's add another view container, which will contain our buttons to start the meditation session. So let's apply a class name first, actually. So class name, so margin bottom of 5. And then we will use our custom button that we created earlier, which is self-closing. Let's see the props that we need. Here's title. So we'll just say start meditation. And it needs an on-press event handler. So for now, we'll just console log and say meditate. We can save that. And now we see our meditation button is displaying here. So to implement a simple version of this, let's scroll up and let's use a useStateHook. So I'll say I'll say seconds remaining, and then set seconds remaining equal to useState, and let's just say 10 seconds, for example. Now we need to import this, so command dot, it's here. So let's just utilize this here. for example, just to show the countdown timer. So now it's showing 10 seconds. So when we click on the Start Meditation button, we want to start this countdown timer. So the way we can do this is we can use the useEffectHook, pass in our callback as the first argument, and for now it's just an empty array. So let's say let timer ID, which is of the type node.js.timeout. Now we'll say exit. So in the case when seconds remaining is equal to 0, then we can just return. Otherwise, we can do timer ID is equal to set timeout, passing in a callback, and this will call set seconds remaining, whatever the seconds remaining are, -1, and this will be called every second. So because the second argument of the setTimeout method is in milliseconds, we pass in 1,000. So that's 1 second. And another thing we want to do in the useEffectHook is we will return this arrow function, and this will be called whenever the component unmounts. So for example, if the user were to click the back button before the timeout were to complete. So here we would do clear timeout, passing in the timer ID. So in order for this useEffect functionality to be called, we don't just want to call when the component first mounts. We want to call whenever the seconds remaining state changes. Now to actually start it, let's add another use state. So I can say const is meditating, and then set meditating equal to use state of false. And let's use this here as well in the dependency list of the useEffectHook. And when the seconds remaining is 0, we will also say set meditating to false. Now when a user clicks on the Start Meditating button, instead of just console logging it, we will say set meditating to true. Let's save this. And so now when we click on this button, we should see this countdown being performed until it reaches 0. So we're going to improve this. This is just a simple implementation. Now another thing, we don't want to call the timeout when the component first mounts. We just want to call it in the case when the user has started the meditation session. So let's highlight this and we'll move it up with Option up arrow and save that. So if we restart it, right, it starts at 10 seconds based on the initial value passed into this useStateHook. We call start meditation, and then starts the timeout. So one thing to notice, since this is just in single digits right now, this text has changed its size, and we want it to display the same size, whether it's single digits or double digits. So let's work on updating that. So let's navigate to the layout file in the app directory's root. So here we'll use the useFonts hook. So we'll specify this here. Say const fonts loaded, and then air equal to useFonts. So this is actually specified in the GitHub repo on the README file. So let's navigate there. Click on the dropdown in the snippets. So you can just copy this. And we will paste it here. Save it. Now let's import the useFonts hook. Command dot. Let's do it manually. Let's do import useFonts from Expo font. Save that. So that gets rid of the error for us. Now if we navigate to our Tailwind configuration file, here we specified in our theme to utilize this font with our mono. So we can utilize that in this component. So we still need to add a bit more setup in our root layout. So here we'll use a useEffectHook, pass in our callback, and for the dependency list, we'll specify fonts loaded and error. We can say if there's an error, then we'll throw that error. in the case when the font is not accessible, now we can do if font's loaded, then we can do the splash screen dot hide. Now we also want to prevent the splash screen from being hidden until all the assets are loaded. So in this case, when all the fonts are loaded. So I can say splash screen. So we define this outside of this component dot prevent auto hide async. Let's add a comment just to provide more context. So this will prevent the splash screen from auto hiding until loading all the font assets. After here, if the fonts have not loaded, return null. Now I can also do if fonts loaded and no error, return null. Get started. So I want to utilize this font in this component, so we can use that using Tailwind. Let's scroll to this text component, and we will use font R mono. So let me click on this. We now see this font being used, and when we do start meditation, there's one more update we need to do. Let's format it. So we can do format the time left to ensure 2 digits are displayed. So I can do const formatted time minutes is equal to cast it to a string, and we'll call math.floor seconds remaining divided by 6, and then we'll do pad start of 2 digits with 0. So we can save that. And now, so this is for the minutes to display on the left side of the colon. Now on the right side of the colon, we'll display the seconds. So const formatted time in seconds is equal to cast it to a string, seconds remaining, and we use the modulo operator, 60, pad start, and passing in those same arguments. So now we will use these in our component. So on the left side is formatted time in minutes, and on the right side is formatted time in seconds. Let's save that. So now I'm going to click on here again. So even though it is single digits, we are padding it with a 0. So now we want to play the associated audio file with the meditation that the user selects. So let's create a function here. Here we'll name it const toggle meditation session status, and it will be asynchronous. So we're using the arrow function syntax. So in the case when the user has already started the meditation, and then when it goes to 0, we'll reset it so it's at least 10 seconds. So in the case when the seconds remaining is 0, then I'll set the duration. Let's say set seconds remaining to be 10 seconds. And then this will toggle the meditation state. So set meditating, and then we toggle is meditating. So did that. So now for the actual audio, let's add another state variable. So I can say const audio sound. I'll say set sound is currently undefined. We'll define the type to be audio.sound. Let's update this. It's supposed to be audio. And we'll import this. Let's see. Import audio from Expo AV. So let's install this library. So here in Expo, we can copy this. Open up a new terminal. Change into simple meditation. And then we'll run this command. So now it's installed. We can close out of this terminal and close it with Control and backtick. And so now this import is available for us. So for the toggle meditation session status, this will also call a method which will start playing the sound. So let's just say const initialize sound. It's also asynchronous. So I can say const. So for this, let's first import the meditation data. So I can do import meditation data. So let me go to this constant file I defined. And so here we defined our interface previously and an object of the different meditation types and the audio files. So now we're utilizing this. I also want to import the audio files object, so those key value pairs. So now in the initialize method that we're working on, I can say const sound is equal to the audio sound. If it's truthy, then we will return it. Otherwise, so now in initialize sound, I can do const audio file name is equal to the meditation data, and let's cast it to a number, id -1 dot audio, so the name of that audio file. So then we can do const with the structure sound from await of audio dot sound dot create async, and we will use audio files with the key of the audio file name, and then we can say set sound, and let's return that as well. So for actually calling this function, I want to create another function. Add this here, const, and I'll name this toggle play and pause async. Better name would be toggle sound. So now I can do const sound is equal to, if the audio sound is truthy, then we will utilize it. If it's falsy, then we will call initialize sound. So we can get the status of it asynchronously with sound.getStatus async. So now we can call the play method based on the status. So if the status is loaded, then I can do await sound.play asynchronous, play sync, else await sound.pause. Now another thing we can do, we can add another state variable to determine whether the audio is playing. So we can do const is playing audio, and then set playing audio equal to use state. So the initial state is false. So here in the toggle sound, we can call set playing audio to true, and otherwise it'll be false. We can also include it in this conditional statement. So if the status is loaded and we are not playing the audio, then in that case we want to start playing the sound. So now we want to utilize toggle sound here in the toggle meditation session status function. So await toggle sound. So now let's utilize this method when the user clicks the start meditation button. So we can just add a reference to this. So now, let's say if I navigate to this item and I start the meditation, this starts playing the sound associated with this meditation up. And go back. So now when we click the back button, the audio is still playing. So one thing I need to implement as well, I can add another use effect hook. So use effect. And for the dependency, I will specify the audio sound object. So when we click the back button, and when the component unmounts, it will call this function, this arrow function that we were returning. And so I will say audio sound optional.unload async. Do that. So now we click into it, and we'll go into another meditation session. Let's go on this one. Now, when we press the Start Meditation button. It starts playing the associated sound, and when we click the back button, it stops playing the audio sound. So now when we click on one of these meditation previews, we go to the meditate screen, and we see that it always is 10 seconds. So we want to adjust that. So let's add another button. You scroll down here. I'll just copy this and Shift Option and down arrow to copy it. So now I'll name this Adjust Duration. Let's save that. Let me add another prop here for container styles, and I'll say margin top of 4, just to add more spacing. So now we need to add another component, and I want this to be a Modal. So here in the app directory, I'm going to right click and add a new folder, and this will be a group. So in parentheses, do Modal, and I will name this Adjust Meditation Duration.tsx. So then React Native function export and then tab. Let's close this. So adjust meditation duration. So now in the root layout of the app directory, let's add, copy this, Shift Option down arrow. And so the name is Modal. And then adjust duration. Actually, it's adjust meditation duration. Let's add to this options object. So I'll add presentation, and it's a Modal. Save that. So now if we navigate back to the meditate component, so when a user clicks on this button to adjust the duration, I want to call a method. So I'll define that here. And I'll name it handle adjust duration. So if the users started the meditation session, then we will toggle the status to stop it. And it'll be router dot push. So / Modal, and then adjust meditation duration. And we will add that here for the on press. So we add a reference to this function. So now if we click on this, adjust duration, it brings up the Modal. So now we can work on this component. So let's add a class name here. Class name, flex1, and we'll just say relative. Now let's define an app gradient, and we'll apply the colors. So we will do the string array, so hashtag 161b2e. Then we'll do hashtag 0a4d4a, and then hashtag 766e67. And within it, let's just define, just for now, just so we can see it, text, and I'll just say test. Save this. So now when we click on it, we now see that gradient is being applied. So we can get rid of this text component outside of it. So let's add a back button, which we can use to more easily close that Modal. So within it, here if I go into this component, and I just copy, here I can paste that in. Let's import that, save. Now we would do on press. So that will call router from Expo Router.back, and we'll do a class name of absolute top 8 left 6. I'll just apply a z index there. So when we do adjust duration, we see that back button here, and we can also click on it to close that Modal, or we can drag this down to close it. So it's more user friendly. So now let's add a view. Let's bring it up so we can see those changes that we're making. So then let's define a class name of justify center, and the height is 4/5. So within it, we can do a text where we say adjust your meditation duration. So we see that here in black. So let's apply styles to it. Class name. I'll say text center. We'll make it bold. We'll change the font size to text 3XL. We'll make the text white, and we'll do a margin bottom of 8. So we get that. Now let's add a view. So we're going to add different buttons here. So we'll use our custom button component that we made earlier. Custom button. So let's define our props. So the title, I'll just say it's 10 seconds. And on press, for now, we'll just console log it. Console.log, 10 seconds. And container styles is margin bottom of 5. Let's save that. So now we get our button displaying. So let's create more copies of this button. So highlight it, Option or Shift Option and down arrow. So we'll create 4 buttons. And let's just update this. So 5 minutes, all lowercase either, minutes, 10 minutes, and 15 minutes. So now we have it displaying as we wanted it to, and we can click on these buttons. But now we can update, and we'll add a function here. So const handle press, take in the duration, which will be a number, and this will do router.back. And so rather than console logging it, we can update this. So we'll do handle press. That's 10 seconds. Handle press of, this is 5 minutes. So we can define it like that so it's more easily readable. Here, this is 10 minutes. And this is 15 minutes. 15 times. So we have this connected, but we need a way so that the user can select the duration that they want, and it closes out the Modal, but we also need to update the time remaining on this meditation screen to display the time that they selected. So currently, the state is being stored in this component, but we need a way to set that state in the Modal. So we're going to use that using React context. So let's close all this. Let's create a directory in Simple Meditation, and I'll name this context. And within it, I'll create a file, and I'll name it timer context.tsx. So here, context acts as a wrapper around my project files. So by utilizing React context, this enables me to have different components and have them share state without having to utilize prop drilling. So here, let's define our interface for the shape of our context. So we'll do timer context type, and I'll do duration, which is a number, and set duration to update it. And this will be of type dispatch from React, and set state action, and it's a number, which is the value that we're setting. So now we can do export const timer context is equal to react.createContext. So we can just import that from React. The shape of it is timer context type, and we'll pass in our initial object. So the duration will be initially 10 seconds, and set duration is just this arrow function. So now we can define the interface. So timer provider props. The children is React Node. So let's define this const timer provider. So we'll destructure children. See this? Children. So we'll do colon, we'll define the type. Now we'll define our state here. So we'll say const duration, set duration equal to use state, Let's see, and we'll import this, command and dot. Then we will return timer context dot provider. So this is the wrapper component. Then the value, say duration, and set duration. And then the children will render within it. So we defined our context. And now let's export the timer provider. Export default timer provider. And we want to utilize it in our root layout, which wraps our application. So let's just highlight all this and then bring up Command-Shift-P, so the command palette. And we will wrap it with timer provider. Import that. So since we wrapped everything, if I go back to my context, go up here. So the duration and the set duration is now accessible for all of the children components. So I can access it with the use of a hook. So if I go into the Modal, we want to set the duration. So we can do that here. Say const set duration. We use the useContext hook from React, and we pass in the context. And so now we can call this here set duration to this duration argument. So we're now able to set it in this Modal, and we want to utilize it on this meditate component. So we go here, meditate. So currently, we have the duration set with seconds remaining using the useState hook, but now we want to use the React context that we created. So for now, we can just comment this out. Then we can do const. So we'll do structure duration and set duration. Use context, and then the timer context. And so rather than naming it duration, let's rename it to be seconds remaining. So now we go and set seconds remaining. Let's update this to be set duration. And this is also set duration. So now, let's see if I go to adjust duration and I click on 5 minutes. Now that's updated and I see this duration set because that is being shared between these two components. So when I do start meditation, does the drop down. So let's go back. I'm going to refresh it. So Command and D, let's reload it. Now another thing I want to do, if I scroll down, currently it always says start meditating, but I want to conditionally render what I display here. So use our curly braces. So if the user is meditating, then I'll say stop. Otherwise, I'll say start meditation. Okay, good. So now let's play it. And we can stop it and continue it. Let's adjust the duration here to 5 minutes and let's play it. So now it's working as expected. We go back and it stops playing the sound. So one thing, I click back, and then when I click back into the meditate screen, it's still at 4 minutes and 54 seconds. So let's update this use effect hook. So we can do a set duration. So the default is 10 seconds. So if we click the back button and then go back into it, by default, it will start as a 10-second meditation. Before we get started, if you're interested in supporting my courses and projects, you can follow me on my new YouTube channel and Instagram at StephenCodecraft. You can also explore my courses at StephenCodecraft.com. And if you're looking to enhance your health and fitness routine, check out my workout and meal planning app at FitFuelPlanner.com. The app offers over 100 recipes, workout plans, meal plans, and a grocery list feature. It's designed to make tracking your calories and macronutrients straightforward and stress-free. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next section.